Garrett, thank you so much for taking the time. First of all, for helping us, because Justin and I, we got off that call and we were like, man, we'd love to like work with Garrett. He provided so much insight, and not just because you know the space well, and you've been in this type of software for a long time, been in SaaS for a long time as well, but just like your ability to understand the early stage and the different sort of like journeys within the much larger journey of those stages was super helpful. So I really appreciate your time.
Hey, you bet. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for jumping on the show. Real quick, why don't you just tell folks a little bit about your background and what you're up to now?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Garrett. My background really is in B2B SaaS, early stage B2B SaaS. Started my career actually in something completely different. I worked at a large B2C company, retail at Target at their headquarters. And, eventually just realized I missed the small, fast-paced startup feel. So found my way back into that. So for the last decade, I've been working in marketing leadership in early stage B2B software companies. And about a year and a half ago, I started consulting on my own. So started my own company called Prelude Marketing. And I work with early stage startups in the B2B space, both software and professional services, to help them hone in their go-to-market strategy and also just really solidify their website positioning, messaging, who they're talking to. So that's a lot clearer.
It's funny. I had never really paid as much attention to positioning and messaging as I have the last couple years, just given that, well, we work with and our software is used by product marketers a lot, right? And then before that, I was at a startup that was also serving product marketers as a target persona. But it really hit me that like what I hate to say best practices, but I guess that's the best way to describe it. But the best practice for a founder was really going through those iterations early on around positioning and messaging and so on. Because I remember when I got to primarily like the Silicon Valley area, but this also happened in other regions that I lived in and was involved with the startup community. I'd go and meet founders and they'd be like, "Oh, we're a platform that maximizes ROI for your XYZ." And I'd be like, "What?"
I don't know. I don't know what you just said, right?
Yeah. And that was myself as a salesperson, and I wasn't technical, right? Like I'm still not, for the folks out there who know me. I tried to learn Python one time. It didn't work. But for me as a salesperson, I was like, I don't really understand that. Like, and over time, I realized that like us really as founders being able to hone in on those stories early on, even if it's like the first version of the story that maybe is only going to get you to X number of customers, was really, really powerful. Because I felt like a lot of the time, especially in like the Silicon Valley area where there's like this mantra or this mindset of like going big, so sell the platforms and raise VC on these big stories, I didn't quite understand it until, of course, I got there and really dug in and had those conversations and was getting a lot of that feedback or coaching from folks in the ecosystem around how to speak to VCs or investors, that big picture, and how that was distinctly different from like a very
Almost
actionable sales thing.
almost opposite. And that's the thing I've learned is, a lot of times I have to tell founders who have recently raised money, okay, you just told this big story to your investors. Now, in terms of your go-to-market messaging from marketing and sales perspective, it's almost opposite. Like you're telling the biggest story possible. You're talking about all the different people who you could eventually serve. And now when you go to market, it's focus as much as possible. Focus, focus, focus. Talk about the value you provide, exactly what you do. And over time, you can expand that vision. But, it's funny because, yeah, that's a mindset shift that founders have to go through a lot of times, because it's just a completely different audience and approach.
Yeah, and that really resonates. And for the folks out there, like I still haven't been great at telling the VC story, right? Like that broad story, because I guess how I was wired. I was like, how do I get from like, step A to step B, right? Like, and so anyway, so I'm still learning that. But real quick, you are really, really good at helping organizations find product market fit at a high level. Like, how do you approach finding product market fit within B2B SaaS?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it starts with like defining what does product market fit actually mean, because there's lots of different definitions out there. I mean, there's, different ways that people have tried to measure it. The best one that I've heard and go back to time and time again is, can you consistently replicate a successful customer case study? That's really what that's really what product market fit comes down to. Do you have one successful customer? Do you know exactly what makes them successful with your product or service? Can you go find more just like them who you can help as well? And over time, as you serve more and more, you replicate that successful customer case study, your product market fit gets stronger and stronger. So, I mean, it's important to realize like companies who have lots of different customers, it's possible for them to have strong product market fit with some of their customers and weak product market fit with others. It's not an all or nothing. It's not a binary thing, right? And so when you think about that approach to, hey, can you consistently replicate a customer case study? That's the best definition I've heard. So going back to your question of like, how do you find product market fit? What I found, and again, I'm a student of this. I've studied this for a long time. I'm constantly looking at new things that people are putting out. There's really two main approaches that I found. The first is the classic customer discovery process. So Steve Blank, wrote Four Steps to the Epiphany years ago, kind of introduced this idea of customer discovery. Then the book Lean Startup came out after that, which kind of really built process on top of that. This whole Lean Startup customer discovery process is about, tease out the flaws in your business model before you actually start building, right? Like it's go talk to people, interview, research, build prototypes, test that, come back and iterate, and then actually build a minimum viable product and then go to market, start selling it, right? So that's a like option one. That's approach number one. And I think that there is value in doing that. I think the second approach that a lot of people take is sell to learn. Forget all the foundational stuff, just start selling something. And through the process of selling, you'll figure out what people want and what they don't, and you can go build it. I actually think there's merit in both of those things. I think that that if you jump right into selling without actually doing some research and figuring out what the problem is and who the audience is and whatnot, that there'll be a lot of pain there. You're able to skip a lot of that pain and by doing some of that initial research. I also think that research is great, but it doesn't mean anything until you've actually sold something, right? People will lie to your face, and tell you, yes, I have this problem. Yes, I'd buy it. And then you ask them, will you actually give me money and I'll solve this problem for you? And then they say no, right? And so you really don't really learn it until you jump in and start selling. So again, those are kind of the two main approaches. Happy to dive into those in more detail, but I think it's really about customer discovery, lean startup, plus selling to learn and that approach.
My question, I wanted to kind of circle back to the idea of consistently replicating that successful customer case study. And by the way, some of your feedback that you provided to Justin and I was so awesome. And the idea that you talked about highlighting that case study, right? That was really great. Maybe we can dive into that later. But how does the amount of money that you are getting paid factor into gauging how much product market fit is there, right? I know that's kind of an offshoot, right? So again, like let's say you have consistent usage, like people are, let's just assume that a daily usage of your product by the organization or a large team within the organization is there, and all these sort of things, right? Like again, the engagement is there, but maybe they're paying you something that longer term is not going to be sustainable. So I think a lot of us in startups will throw out the first version of pricing and we'll be like, all right, will anyone pay for this? Okay, yeah, okay, they'll pay us $100, but like we can't direct sell $100 subscriptions, right? So yeah, I think you get what I'm asking. Like, how much does the price point at that very moment equate to product market fit acquisition?
Yeah. So I think the key here is like, how should you define a best fit customer? Right. And really I define it in a couple different ways. So one of the first criteria is the most important criteria is, do they get real value out of your product or service? Right. Do they love it?